it's kind of a project, it's a thing.
It is. Yeah. I still don't have a great setup for recording easily, like where to put your phone and that whole setup. I'm still not great at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have a podcast now. Do you want to share a little bit about that journey and where that started?
Well, I have always been interested in encouraging women to go into computer science. I loved choosing computer science as my major. I have loved my career in computer science. And before I started Nyla, I started a blog called Smarty Pants. And I got kind of far on it, but didn't put any energy into it after I started Nyla and had to go crazy trying to get Nyla up and running. And now that I'm not working on contract, I had a little bit more time, and I was really turned off by an article on Medium that talked about the 10 best people in tech and didn't include any women. And I asked him why he didn't include any women, and he said, well, there are no women to include, which is ridiculous. And I was pissed. And so I wanted to start a podcast.
He probably doesn't hang out with that many women.
That's true. I mean, look at the Bumble founder, right? And she was mentored by, there's a lot of, and Bumble's focused on women, but she had a terrible experience at, what's the swipey one? This all came after Tinder. Yeah. So she was actually the founder of Tinder. And so she had a terrible experience here, there, and ended up founding Bumble and is a billionaire.
Yeah.
But I was pissed about that.
Not a big deal, right? There's no women tech founders out there that, are crushing it.
So I wanted to share these stories to inspire others to stay in, because there's even a lot of women who, once they have gone through the gauntlet of the degree or getting into the field, find the field so inhospitable that they're jumping out of the field. And so we continue to have a major problem. And this isn't anecdotal. This is, data in all industries, but focused on technology roles. And so something's still really wrong. And I thought, I wanted to share other women's stories who had gone through it and what it looked like. I also really want to encourage people to make more money. I think money is very empowering. Money isn't the end of the world, but I do think that we can all get smarter about how to manage our money, how to make money. I think that there's slight moves that you can do sometimes that really make a really significant difference in your long-term earning potential as well, both as an employee and then what can we do from an investment perspective. And I love talking about business, and I like just talking. So it seemed a very natural thing to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess just for any viewers that are tuning in, right, I have the privilege and honor of speaking with Shana Cosgrove.
That's right. Good job. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. So Shana, already a podcaster herself. She has her own podcast called Outspoken, and she's the CEO of a government contracting IT services company called Nyla Software Solutions. Is that correct?
Yes.
And they can
find... is it Nyla? Technology Solutions.
Nyla Technology Solutions.
It's Nyla.
And
we, I wouldn't say we're IT services. We're really full stack software engineering and data science, which is a difference from IT services. Though people lump it under the same umbrella, we're really focused on full stack software engineering and data science.
Awesome. Wow. So, and then the combination of your interest in, finance, in personal development, or what motivates people. I'm really excited to kind of I think explore a lot of topics together and get inside to, who Shana is and what it's been like to start a company and grow that, and the perspective that you have and your take on the world of tech.
Sure. Would love to talk about it.
Let's get into it. All right. So to start off, we were just talking about your podcast, and I basically working with creating a platform to share and help people see and find opportunities to improve themselves financially, improve themselves in their career. What's a big driver for you to do all of this, and where do you get your inspiration from?
I named the company after my mother. So my mother passed away suddenly when I was 30 and she was 65. My sister had given birth to a preemie baby the day before.
Wow.
So my mother got to know about my sister's first baby, and then she passed away suddenly that next day. My mother was extremely outspoken, a true leader, and she wanted the best for everyone. She really did. She would grab a waitress's hand and tell her to keep going with her college degree, and gave a lot of unsolicited advice to people. And so I'm motivated a lot by life is short and, could end tomorrow. And what am I doing with my life that impacts others in a positive way? What am I doing to help others? And I think that was actually another big impetus for the podcast, because while I am building a company and that positively impacts the employees and our customers, and that is a big focus there,
right,
I thought perhaps this podcast could influence or encourage others to keep going, or to see themselves in a different light, or to tell a story about themselves that was negative or broken, and to start telling a new story about themselves.
Wow, that's powerful. And thank you. Thank you for the journey that you started and the impact that you're already having. I already looked at some of the podcasts, and you're speaking with some really amazing people, and I'd love to spend a little bit more time listening and getting deeper into the content that you're sharing. So when you look at content, or when you look at, I guess, opportunities, I saw that you have not just Nyla that you're working with, but you're also a part of a marketing company. Is that right?
Yes.
So
So I found it.
You almost had a successful marketing strategy or something, and then you were like, wow, this could actually be its own company.
Pretty much exactly right. Yeah. So Nyla, as a federal government contractor, is a HubZone company. And one of the requirements to be a HubZone certified company is that 35% of your employees have to live in a HubZone. And a HubZone is a historically underutilized business zone. One of the ways we started having HubZone employees was people on overhead. Well, in government contracting, margins are thin, and you have to keep track of your overhead. So we knew as we grew, and we had to continue to hire from a HubZone, and not necessarily would we be able to find people with a top secret clearance and a software engineering background, which is our traditional hire.
Mm-hmm.
How were we going to find people in a HubZone that would earn revenue versus cost? And because we have such a focus on building software and speaking to the user and really delving into user personas and being effective on websites and understanding the number of clicks on websites, digital marketing seemed a very natural outreach and focus. And as you know, also attracting software engineers with top secret clearances is one of the most difficult tasks that you could ever do.
If not the most difficult.
Yes. It's like I picked the worst market ever to start a business.
Yeah, I would say it's it's the very in a little bit of a reframe. It's the most unique market that has a amazing potential to, penetrate the market right, and to be able to, scale and work in the most exciting mission like customer set that you're a part of. And at the same time, it is such a niche market where there are not many people, and incredibly competitive at the same time.
Extremely competitive. And most of the people that a small business are looking for are the cream of that crop. Right. So it's a very small pound. You're looking for the absolute best. And most of the absolute best do not even want to say that they're looking for a new job, because then they're inundated. Right. They're overwhelmed by the number of people coming after them, and they get really turned off. Mm-hmm. So it was, how do we market to these people? And one of the things is they are lurking digitally. Everyone is lurking digitally. People might not be active on social media. but they are on digital platforms. They're either lurking on Facebook, they're lurking on LinkedIn, they're reading articles. People are on a digital platform a large percentage of their day. And that's how we got good at digital marketing. And it seemed weird. So we ran some of the work through Nyla, but it seemed really weird to be like, Nyla is a government contractor. And oh, by the way, we work with small businesses to do marketing. It was a weird branding blend. And it seemed unfair to my business partner, who is really good at search engine optimization and the website development. So we ended up creating our own company. And so Vital Up Marketing was born 2 years ago.
Very cool. Very cool. So you had a DNA, question of, hey, do we really want to prioritize Nyla being its own entity? And ultimately, you also kind of starting to get into the territory of like revenue and shareholding. And, this is kind of like a new outfit, like a new shop. You had a new business partner, it sounded like, that you started working with, right? And I think ultimately, you can put everything under an umbrella, but when you kind of help brand a service, brand an identity for a company, and then try to galvanize and like bring people under that, I think it creates an easier way to spearhead a vision for the team versus getting caught up in, when I talk to people, it's like, yeah, we're Nyla. I mean, we do data analytics, data science, and software development, and cybersecurity, and then you switcheroo to, but we also do marketing.
It was weird, right? It was exactly, you captured it perfectly. It was exactly that. It sounded bad. And in marketing in general and in business, you actually want to be very narrowly focused. You want to be able to talk extremely well to a very niche area of service or problem solving for a customer. You don't want to sound okay at many things. You want to be great at a certain area.
Yes, that was a visceral lesson on my journey starting the company that I'm a part of now. In the very beginning, when you're starting, and I'd also love to get your opinion on this and kind of how it ties into marketing. But in the very beginning, there was two sides of, hey, I mean, we do kind of want to cast a wide net, and we want to we don't really know who we can be or what we can provide to the marketplace and what service or products people have a demand for. But at the same time, it's almost if you just go with this very blasé, we could do anything, or like, what is your need? It almost instantly shuts people off, at least if you're at a conference or if you're, networking event, especially with people that, for lack of better word, just have value. Like they're confident that they know what they're doing. Like they've already got a pipeline of, X revenue, and they're looking for other people who are kind of in that similar tier that already have the invested business process, already have triangulated on their niche, so that when you come to them, we found a huge turnkey, super marketing buzzword, turnkey solution, to just say, hey, this is a very specific thing that we do. And we focused on TSSCI, full scope, poly, high level clearance recruiting and talent acquisition for clients versus being a whole bunch of other things or trying to identify. And I think that was a force multiplier, and it just really, it almost like helped connect us with the right people when we just spoke on our mission directly.
Right. And when you're small, you're scared because you want to make revenue, but it turns out that going narrow helps you make the revenue much more quickly. And it seems very scary to make that twist. But I always say, try it. There's a lot of things you can try. So just try, going to the next meeting and going narrow, right? Or try for 1 month going narrow and see what happens, right? It's not a forever choice. You could be like, screw it, I'm going back and I'm being, everything to everybody. But that's an easy one to just say, just go try really selling one story that month and see what happens. Yeah,
that's incredible wisdom. Thank you for sharing that. Because you need to experiment. And I think it's good to almost frame hey, I'm going to go into this meeting with this goal, or I'm going to give myself this focus, and then experiment and see. And you have to take a statistical analysis, and what we call machine learning or number crunching. We all are machine learning. We all are very intuitive. How did that person look at me when I kind of said this? Did their eyes look away? Did they roll off? Was I able to get a business card, or were they responsive? So I think we're always kind of triangulating and trying to find the best outcome binary path. It's like, if I did this or if I did this, which ones are leading towards a, successful ramp of success?
Right. And I loved your example of body language, because in a lot of the software systems we build, you don't get to take a user poll and they're not voting with dollars, right? They have to use it. So the question is, how are they satisfied? Have you done a good job from a software perspective in satisfying it? Because in commercial world, they vote with their dollars. They come to your site or not, right? They're buying or not, or maybe they answer polls. But in a lot of times when you're building Department of Defense systems, your users are captive. They don't have a choice. They have to deal with the crappy software if you produce crappy software. And so I gave this example of, yes, we cannot necessarily get great numbers, but we can tell by body language for sure whether we're hitting the mark. Like, are they unhappy or happy when we walk in the room? Right? When the developers come in the room, are they like ready to jump at you? Or are they like, oh, awesome.
Yeah. Like, oh, they're back. Or like, wow, we were waiting for you. And then you walk in the room and they're already prepared with what the holy grail. The customer or the users are prepared with the feature requests, and it would be great. Could it do this and that? And it's like, oh my gosh, thank you. This is the holy grail.
Yeah.
And that feedback is so vital and important. And we're actually building our own little software right now at the company, and just getting that feedback loop and experience, and almost knowing when the right time to ask for feedback, because you don't want to, in marketing, and I'd like to hear your thoughts. It's like, how do you dial in correctly when to ask for feedback, with certain clients or with certain users, not to overpressure them, but then you don't want to miss out on some of that real valuable feedback that could steer your development path differently? Or do you kind of stick to your guns and your gut feeling of like, it's this balance? Like, how do you balance that in your development efforts, either with your IT customers or even on the marketing front?
Well, on software systems, or I think in general, you focus by actions and not words. So you can send out any survey and you could get positive, negative feedback, which tends to be the extreme. Most people don't vote, medium. So you either get 5-star or you suck. You really do instrumentation on what is actually happening. Are you getting the follow-up phone calls? Are people returning your calls? Are people clicking on add to cart and buy, right? Yeah. Those are the actual data. It doesn't matter what people tell you when you ask a survey. A survey is a valuable exercise that should be done, but nothing tells you as much as watching the actual behavior. So I tend to ignore people's words and watch actual behavior. Yeah,
I really like that answer. I think ultimately how people are interfacing and using, and the more pixel targeting or analytics that you can see each of those events, and then use that to create your dashboard reporting of like, hey, these many people. And this is, I think, marketing 101, right? When it comes to click-through rate of your website, and like how long are each user staying at each page, and then how do we optimize it so that they get to the checkout page usually, right?
Right. And most people don't like changing pages today. Now it's scroll. So most home pages of companies should be very long, and the job should be available on the home page because people don't like having to click. They like scrolling.
Interesting. So you see...
So you're showing your age, Alexander, by talking about clicking to different pages. People like to scroll. So even my own website, and I'm not perfect by any means, but our own website, we were going to really update this one page, and it was like, no one goes to that page. They go to that page like an eighth of the time. Yeah. Everyone goes to the home page. Yeah. And then you can see how often they go to the bottom of the home page. So it's that top section that is the most critical. Yes,
absolutely. And I noticed on your homepage, for anyone that wants to view it, I think it's Nyla
.io.
NylaTechnologySolutions.com.
Or also, we did the alias Nyla.io.
Oh, okay.
So we have both, yeah.
Nyla.io. So I'll include this as a link.
Because who wants to type out that?
Yeah, I'll include a link at the bottom of this when it's out there that people can go there directly to see it. I do notice that you have a nice video or graphic. Do you feel like that's the best strategy to have some type of engaging content there?
I got to change it. No.
Okay.
No, it's terrible. I got to change it. It's old school. It's not cool. It makes us look like everybody else who has no style, so it makes us not different from Joe Schmo, competitor who is also trying to hire for the exact same job. So I'm actually have it on my to-do list to change it.
Okay, understood.
So I hate it.
What about all good. It's all about process improvement. What about a video, like a real life video, either a presentation about the company? There's someone that I speak with on the marketing front, and his angle is people now today really just want all the information bottom line up front. And he said to put just a really cool video of either myself or showing the team members, just us in person, just going through kind of our executive summary or going through our service or what we're doing. Is that something that you would do, or what do you see as being the most value creating top content for a website?
Well, I would ask him how many people are actually watching the video and how many people are going through to the end. So I would ask for data on that to start with. So he's supposing that they want all the data up front. I think people do want to know your benefits. And I do think showing what the salary range is up front is very helpful. Mm-hmm. And saying what the work location will be like. A lot of people want work from home or work from home flexibility. So I think having that information, having as much information as people can gather without having to talk to someone is definitely appealing. Yeah. But most people don't even know you exist if you're a small business. They've never heard of you. So if you are new to the industry or your family isn't in the industry, you may not even know of the really big companies to go to. How are you going to know about some teeny tiny small company that people have never heard about? So I think being active on platforms where people are spending a large portion of their time is much more critical. Example, LinkedIn, yes. Right? Everybody's on LinkedIn for a job. Anyone who they know, I'm looking for a job, they're probably on Indeed, LinkedIn, or Glassdoor. Mm-hmm. And so to assume that someone is going to your website first is probably the very last thing they're doing. They're probably even applying for a job before even going to your website. So if you really look at the customer journey, they're not going to your website first. Maybe even after this, they might not remember me, but they might go to LinkedIn or search my name, and they might look at everything else before they go to the careers page of the Nyla website. Mm-hmm. So I think you have to map the customer journey and think about it from the user perspective.
Yeah, well said. And there's a lot of time and resources, I think, looking at your digital avatar, either for yourself as a CEO and ultimately your company, the DNA online and how people can, find out information related to you on Glassdoor, like you said, or LinkedIn. There's other pages that other types of businesses really rely on Yelp or Foursquare reviews or things of that nature, right? And then the marketing funnels that we're sending people through, we are kind of either sharing some of the links to those pages or having some of those targeting strategies to people that visited those pages to try to give them the right content, if that makes sense, right? To try to guide them.
Yeah, and I think the email funnel is critical. So we just switched to applicant tracking software to one that we can easily email certain set of people we've talked to in the past about a job that they might that they might be applicable to. So maybe we talked to you 2 years ago, didn't work out, you took a different job, but now you're probably not going to our website. Maybe you're not tracking me on LinkedIn, but we can send you an email. You remembered how you felt about us. Yeah. So email still has that high degree of intimacy as long as you make it intimate and focused on the person.
Yes, well said. Well said. I believe that email automation and having really quality copywriting that you spend some time thinking about and then timing correctly. I'm a big believer in you send an email. I think the next one could either be 3 or 5 days, and then you do a weekly basis up to around 4 or 5 emails. I think anymore after that, it's obviously not really the right time, or the person's not interested. And just what a time saver. And I mean, we're living in an age today where there's so many of these systems that you get to couple together, right? To string in your funnel, to string in creating connections. Like there's LinkedIn automation out there. There's text message automation. There's every flavor of CRM under the sun, right? Or ATS softwares that are out there, and that are really trying to optimize every business process. And it's exciting. Like, where do you see this going in 5 or 10 or 20 years? Like, how do you see that automation like evolving?
I think the future is on individualization. So I think the future is on really understanding who you're talking to and editing your content based upon who you're talking to. Mm-hmm. So one of the problems I get from LinkedIn automation or LinkedIn CRM is people are trying to sell me before they know me. They have no idea what my pain points are, and they're immediately asking for a sale, which would be off-putting if I met you in person, and it's off-putting when I'm meeting you digitally.
Right.
You have not taken any time to understand who I am, but as you're getting to know people, or as you're messaging people, same thing. If I'm sending a software engineer a generic email that's focused on IT services or help desk services, they won't even listen to me ever again, because I don't understand who they are and what their pain points are, right?
Right.
A software engineer's pain points are typically like, I'm working on old tech, I'm underpaid, or largely I'm working on old tech. is most software engineers' pain point.
Get your
and
tech
so
better.
If you send them, even if you send them lovely content but doesn't talk to what their pain points are, they're going to ignore you, and you may not get that other chance because it's a very crowded marketplace.
Right.
So I think the ability of tech and artificial intelligence and machine learning is the ability to strongly provide highly individualized content and messaging to people if you know how to use it. And wow. I think about Spotify algorithms as an example of that, right? Like my husband and I could like similar music, but there might be some additional overlays where he likes rock and roll a little bit more than I do. Now, I like rock and roll, but not the same as he does. I don't like the Rolling Stones. And our algorithms are unique for us, and our recommendations are unique to us. And I think CRM systems, email content systems have to get to that. And I think when you are doing business, it is down to an individual and not treating everyone as if they're the same. So the less we stereotype, the less we make assumptions about people, the less we put people in buckets, and we really listen to who the person is telling us that they are, remember that, and speak to their pain points, the better we're going to be.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for just sharing, I think, in a very concise, easy to understand format. You know, it is a lot of first seek to understand, then be understood.
And that's never going to go away, ever. No matter how much tech we have, ever. It's what it's going to allow us is to hopefully connect the dots sooner, connect the high quality dots much sooner.
Yes. I think the key for technology is the acceleration of interactions. It's the acceleration of the time it takes you to type on the keyboard. It's the acceleration of sending the email. It's the acceleration of following up or appropriately, I would say, dosing, I think, what you're trying to calibrate. You're trying to like percolate interest in your customer. And I almost had like this vision, I think, that I've been thinking about. I was speaking with one of my friends who's a director at a big company. She's actually going to come on the podcast next. Her name, I won't say her name, but she's a director at Synopsys, which is a really cool pen testing company. So we were talking, and we were on the subject of machine learning and like making recommendations for people and content. And so I almost imagined in the future, the content creators, it's like, are you familiar with the Old Spice commercials that kind of have a unique celebrity on, right? And I actually don't necessarily connect with some of these celebrities or icons that they use. Now, what if in the future, every person that's a content producer could get contracted by Allspice to, or machine learning just inserting them inside the video, so that people that I admire and listen to basically are the ones pitching any type of service or product, or I should go to Toys R Us to get, the next toy, or I should look into, this next computer, or, this motorcycle, because, my rock star idol is the one riding the motorcycle. And I think at scale, with all the different preferences and personalities that are out there, I think it's a wild thought to see how computer generated, or by including all of these content creators that people follow, could transform the content that you receive.
Well, I think two things about that. One, that's why micro influencers, for example, on Instagram are making money, because it's getting very specific to an audience where people are, there's so much noise out there, and there's certain people they follow. So if that person recommends something, even if they only have 1,000 followers, that might be way more effective than having somebody who's too broad and doesn't have a very clear audience. And so we've seen a rise of micro influencers. I think the idea of, on the flip side of that, or everything has a dark side. So while there's goodness, there's also a dark side. And I think that's why we've also seen a backlash of Instagram influencers where they're making money peddling everything and it's not authentic. So I think in an era where we can have more and more fakes and deep fakes, and we can have very accurate fakes. I mean, you see this even in art, right? Like, and especially as we're coming up on digital art being created, and now there is like a cryptocurrency tied to like a digital art with an imprint, and you own that art. Or in
that's amazing.
Sports, you're able to own the video clip perhaps of a basketball team winning that scoring basket. So I think there will always be a need for real human connection. There will always be a need for authenticity and a belief in authenticity, right? So people will know when you're pushing something that's fake versus you're pushing something that you truly believe in. And there's a big difference.
Yeah.
People can feel that authenticity.
100%. And not just with art and sports. I think the deep fakes, and maybe if you can kind of describe it for any listeners that don't understand this kind of technology, and then the whole relation with news, right? I think a big portion of what we want is authentic. We want to be authentically informed, and it's amazing how there is so much content out there that is actually not that verified, or if just blatantly a made up article or something, and how it construes reality, and how of course there's large investment people that either, if they want to influence a certain crowd of people for a goal, that they can do this. And I think then you get into very like deep. You can get into like the nation interests and stuff. We don't need to do that far. But yeah, if you can share kind of like what you can around like deep fakes, and what and the inherent desire for authenticity, and how do you see that being handled in the future?
Well, I think we saw it with the first election of Trump versus Hillary Clinton, where Russia, no question about it, was interfering and providing misinformation. Absolutely, a huge portion of their intelligence work is not over here and listening. It is literally creating misinformation and destabilizing not just the U.S. economy, but the U.S. ability to trust known entities, right? We don't trust the New York Times as an authentic source of news anymore, right? We don't trust CNN or Fox, or we don't trust literally large respected institutions. We didn't trust the EPA and their recommendation of what's going out. And I think that you saw that in the like, people want to know what is indeed fact and true and authentic. And when you can't trust that, it causes major socioeconomic problems.
And psychological,
it was a very effective campaign by the Russian government to cause misinformation. And they have like whole Twitter campaigns, and people are influenced by what other people think, right? And so they have like these fake Twitter accounts that are spawning high clickbait threads that are inflammatory, right? So they're using data to see what are the topics and threads or images that cause the greatest amount of click-through, and then continue to thrive upon that.
Yes, and then have lots of just robot actors who are responding and then jumping into topics and either introducing something that's inflammatory or trying to instigate people. And these are just, people in Russia just sitting at a computer, and lots of them, and they're just...
Well, the Russian state, it's typically not... the bad actors are typically stealing your accounts for money. This is the Russian state actually, paying as part of their political strategy to destabilize the U.S. socioeconomic fabric.
Yeah, it's very wild.
So a good book about this is called Social Wars, which talks about how war is no longer strictly fought physically between people. It is now also the war of influence and people's opinions of efforts, and also how a lot of information that used to be very private or held in the realm of only the intelligence community is now out there on Twitter, where people are tweeting about events, and that's the first information, and people are able to piece through what really happened from the collective society essentially providing this information.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. So war is now not just on cyber defense, but also on people's influence across social media as well.
It's big. And information warfare, doing the more hacking into things and planting viruses or, worms that are just relaying information or just alerting. And it's a wild world. I think not many people who are in the technology space maybe realize how much warfare is going on across the world. And technology and this whole cybersecurity gap, it's just, we have the Internet of Things, and everything has an IP address, and everything can almost do some basic forms of communication. And it's wild to see like what type of cyberpunk reality perhaps we might come into in like 30, 50 years with so much.
Well, we're coming into it now. They're attacking critical infrastructure. So the Florida water system was attacked, right? Because it's run by devices that are connected to internet. So they were able to hack in and actually change physical things, which impacts society, right? Like they impacted the water supply.
So can you describe like for listeners, like that kind of scenario, right? So we have these water tanks or, big industrial control systems related to water, right? And so how does that kind of look like just from a scenario for someone to better understand like what happened and why?
Well, just for a high-level cartoon example, imagine a cybersecurity actor hacking into a state's electric grid and literally shutting down the entire electric grid. And then everything that we're doing is running on electricity and is relying upon internet. Another common example is other states are preventing GPS from, they're creating GPS blockers. They're sending satellites to break up GPS. So a lot of our weapon systems heavily rely on literally GPS, which is satellite. So what happens if we're trying to kill the bad guy with a GPS-based weapon system, of which almost all of our systems are? So now we have to think about going back to these low-tech environments and what are our failover scenarios. But these are real things that are happening. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's vice versa too, right? The bad guys are trying to do something somewhere, and then they're GPS blocking, or they're, trying to send some pulse where, okay, now you can't access your electric devices, or they're not communicating. Or it's like the cliche movie scene where the hacker guy like plugs into the Ethernet cable, like National Treasure, and they change the camera. So you think everything's going good, but it's not really going good.
No, and that's real. But there's also as many good guys working on
Yeah.
protecting and stopping that, then there are bad guys. So there's always good when there's evil as well. So I think we are at least are seeing that balance, and we're continuing to grow and encourage people. And there's a lot of people who, as people were driven to defend our country in the start of the nation in war and joining the army, there's as many people interested in being part of the cyber defense of the United States as well. So I think it's very exciting and hopeful for the future as well.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of really great people on the frontier protecting us. So when you look at technology in a lot of these exciting areas, you know, like even thinking about Starlink and the potential of Elon Musk's web of satellites around the world providing high latency, like quality internet to anywhere, I think that's going to cause an explosion of digital nomads if it hasn't already started. People are going to be able to work anywhere in the world, and I think that adds a lot of firepower to, you know, our government power to access internet and be available and be able to provide, you know, that power to power devices. But if you can share in your perspective, what's the kind of like upcoming trend in technology, or from like the hunch that you have, or like where's the high value opportunity for people to focus on, or that you find incredibly like interesting today or in the coming years to be a high growth industry?
I think it's the buzzwords that everyone's talking about. I think there's a huge movement towards harnessing large amounts of data, connecting the data to provide a richer and more accurate picture quickly so that decision makers can make accurate decisions, right? People have always made decisions with the best information that they have at the time. And so we are working on providing the absolute most accurate reflection of where we are, state of the world. So situational awareness is continuing to get better and more accurate, and being able to provide accurate information, right? We have facial recognition, biofingerprinting, ability to catch micro expressions and know when things are deep fakes. So I think that we are going to continue to reduce the time that it will take to provide decision makers with critical information, and they will be able to make with a higher degree of probability a decision, right? Mm-hmm. Every decision has some degree of, you know, you're going to win or lose. If 95%, you still have 5% that could go bad. But people still will be making the decisions and be able to provide that. And I think as we continue to have an increased reliance on cyber, we are going to continue to have an increased need for cybersecurity.
Yeah, I believe cybersecurity is, with all the exponential growth of devices and us becoming more and more on the internet, really fascinated with, I think, the AR, VR evolution. I saw the recent, I don't know, have you seen the Microsoft Mesh, their latest version?
No,
it's a very,
but they just won a big contract for, I think, the Army on AR.
Yes, so I think I read about that too. So the Mesh, I think, is their just latest environment. It's their latest HoloLens build, right? And it's just all really fascinating, and I think it's starting to kind of pick up steam. I know there's a lot more people that are, joining virtual reality games, or the virtual reality VR chat. I think is ever more and more growing. And just the dimensions of human experience that come from that. And I think all the data points that we have, and kind of referencing back, I almost feel in some way every company in the next 5 or 10 years, I think every company is a technology company, even if you don't realize it, right? Technology, you have to be involved. Anything as a computer has a phone involved, or a microphone, or you're sharing it online somehow. So and I think machine learning is just, it's powerful, but I'm curious from your point of view, how far along are we down the machine learning from an industry perspective, and who is the top player, or what's the kind of the latest progression in machine learning towards like AI, or where are we like really providing an amazing machine learning use case that's thriving today?
I think Facial recognition is a machine learning, artificial intelligence example, which is highly optimized today, right? I mean, we think nothing about letting our photo repositories, be it Google Photos or you keep it in your Apple Photos, and it automatically recognizes and asks you, is this person, right? It can tell my daughter from a baby to her at 5 years old and tell the difference between my daughter and my son, and automatically categorizes. They know when a selfie is, right? Yeah. They're able to recognize, I think that's just a metadata tag. So I think that artificial intelligence is highly advanced. It has a lot of ethics concerns because it isn't completely accurate, and the application of it can be really negative. So I give you one example. An old school example is just even having a credit score, and not credit scores are not always accurate, right? You need an ability to protest or to say this digital makeup made of me by the computer is not reflective of who I am, and let me give a scenario where a person's going to go in and overwrite it, right? Or we need to fix the algorithm. Another major problem we're seeing because of lack of diversity in building these systems is that they recognize white men very well. They're building solutions for white men very well, and they are not able to do machine learning or facial recognition on people of color at anywhere the same level of fidelity. Wow. And that's a major problem.
Yeah, that is.
You have similar problems with healthcare, right? The healthcare studies that have been done and the data that exists is not the same. It's largely done on white men, and it's not regulated. So the healthcare industry is still focused on solving problems for what they thought was representative of all people, but men are different from women, and certain ethnic groups have very significant different problems or rendering of the same scenarios. And I'll give one classic example is women who have heart disease and have heart attacks is a very different biological reaction. So a woman having a heart attack is wildly different than a man having a heart attack. And they're only starting to highlight this now.
Wow.
And there's a lot of data and studies showing that we don't have enough data that's actually representative of our world. So as a company that focuses on data science, we see that the tech is quite advanced, but there's a lot of ownership on the data. A lot of people are unwilling to release the data. The data is the crown jewels today, right? And when there's cyber attacks, they're going after your proprietary data. They're going after your designs and your systems that you spent tons of money building. Your secret process, your secret recipe is a classic example of data that needs to be highly protected.
Right.
But we don't have enough data often that truly represents the world that we're trying to solve. It's really a subset, and just even acknowledging that our data has that bias and that our outcome will have that bias is critical. And so there are a lot of people who are becoming I don't know what the right word is, but focusing on making sure that artificial intelligence and machine learning is ethical as well, and understanding where it's weak.
Yeah, ethically equal as we're applying it across data sets. I agree with that.
And often, and to be clear, data sets are often very incomplete. That's the more critical thing, right? If you've only run data sets on one subset of the population, but because you are that population, this is why diversity is so critical. Yeah. You don't even know that you didn't include another 40% of the population, right? It didn't even occur to you that you were missing a huge subset. You were like, this data is complete. I'll give another example of lack of diversity is Apple, who is known for their creativity and innovation, created a healthcare app. They did not include the ability to track a women's menstrual cycle. One of the most absolute critical things out of height, weight, blood pressure, next thing women are asked is, when was your last period? And Apple produced their healthcare app and did not include 50% of the population.
Wow. Yeah. I hope that they've included it since then.
Yeah. No.
That's it's that, I think I think it's a challenging concept that you would not imagine the lack of, I guess, insight or either the preference that, the people working on this project at Apple had, or just lack of oversight, right? They're just coding away, and maybe there was a lack of.
But if it's all made up of the same type of people, right? So that's the problem. It's not actively being negative towards a group. It is the lack of even understanding that you didn't include a group, right? So it is not, I'm not saying people or developers are actively thinking. It's just that we all have these biases, and you wouldn't know unless you're on the receiving end of those pain points.
Absolutely.
Right. So I give an example of, I was just asked to join a club that had been historically male. Mm-hmm. And one of their schedules for a program was something that was clearly biased towards men who had women who stayed at home. Because I thought if they had ever had working women or female executives, you would never have it at this time in a million years. But they don't know that because, again, 90% of their population is able to, or their previous population was able to do it. And I was like, almost every woman that I would ever talk to is going to have a problem with this.
Absolutely. And so the thing is, even these big organizations or typical or traditional organizations, either Apple or this group that you've been invited to, it's a very prevalent thing. It's not like it's been solved. It's not completely organized, I think, for a standard equal awareness of the constituents that make up these parties. And I think I think first off, congratulations. And I think it's amazing that you joining that group helped open up that conversation.
Oh, I haven't joined it yet. Let's be clear.
Okay.
I haven't joined it. Because the times don't work for me.
Pending time
literally, to be clear, it's still a turnoff. It's and I'm honest enough to tell them why, right? I'm honest enough to say no, and I'll tell you why. But not, people are just going to vote with their dollars and say no.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, well, we tried. I don't understand why.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think for anyone listening, I think there's definitely, as this is a very social, important topic, as well as, other ranges of BLM or, just opening up society to these topics and these ranges and helping bring awareness to everybody, right? We're a country of many different creeds and colors and, backgrounds, right? But coming together, we're all a part of this. And I think the difference is what creates this amazing country, is that we have so many viewpoints.
Yeah.
Right. And I think for anyone listening, from the data set thing before, one of the questions I want to lead into is what do you see as opportunities to focus on? And I think one area, it's almost how do you democratize maybe data sets or help address projects that are looking for better either decision-making or business processes that equalize the process. I've seen ATS systems or specific recruiting type of service providers that are helping try to anonymize interviewing or remove biases from the interviewing process with certain ways. There's also a big AI company I found in California that's writing job descriptions, and even I don't think it's AMD, it's the other real big hardware provider that NVIDIA is working with them.
Yes.
And so they help rewrite job descriptions in a more equal, unbiased way that women or any color, any race or ethnicity, right? Non-binary. So remember, not even, we're saying male, female, and that's an old idea, right? Most Gen Z and millennials are open to this non-binary and not even associating with a gender. Mm-hmm. So that's where I get to the future is highly individualized. Yes.
It's not about male, female. It is about how do you identify? What is your feeling, right? And you may feel I'm polyamory and I don't identify with either gender, mm-hmm. or, and that's the future. But they've shown that even today that, just the name of a resume, a male or female name on a resume has such bias introduced by all of the readers. Mm-hmm. right? Where the man is seen favorable and the woman with the same exact resume is negative. So I think that these efforts to anonymize people and to make it more equitable is great for getting in the door. Mm-hmm. Then we have to be fair when we're in the door, right? So there's two problems. It's getting people to actually want to walk in, mm-hmm. and then it's keeping them in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have both problems pretty significantly today.
Where, in terms of other areas on technology or things that you see either in your business process, what do you see as taking either too much time or potentially too much cost that you see? Like if somebody could build an app or add value to your life or your business, what are things that are costing too much, taking too much time, or maybe if it could just be done differently, what would that look like? Or does anything come to mind?
Well, we have two major problems that take us quite a bit of time. One is understanding the potential jobs we have for someone and understanding how well someone maps to that job. Whether it be, right now you have a lot of times just the resume, then you do an interview to see their attitude and see if they'd like it. But I think that taking a human being and saying, here's the job description and seeing if they're a match or not is quite a bit of work. As you know, even just sorting through who are the best candidates for this job. Mm-hmm. If I have 100 qualified candidates, how do I down select to the top 10 to pick, right? How do I make higher level criteria? And a lot of times then you're looking at a personality or culture fit, and how do you assess that from a resume? So I think that there's a lot for that. I think finding people who are capable, who don't have a perfect resume match. So as you know, we have an extreme gap in the number of open positions versus the number of qualified people. People become qualified often by getting a chance and working on the job and perhaps doing additional training. So I've actually developed an app. It's still in the MVP stage, but it is taking people who are not socioeconomically connected and helping them understand career paths and what different things they might need to do, and also helping them improve their whole process of interviewing, right? So understanding what biases may exist and helping them be much more in control of their interviewing process and so that they have more power to make a match versus right now the companies have all the power.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. I think those are incredible machine learning opportunities. And it's even fascinating. I think the first one that you shared, the resume matching to candidates, is something that we're even working on, because I've heard that from a lot of clients, and I see how, personally, I've witnessed that across the cycle, from the sourcing, trying to like find a resume, to having the person in the recruiting phase, right? It would help out to just automate or accelerate the interaction there. And then you have the decision maker, which is either a hiring manager or let's say it's a director or perhaps yourself. You quickly want to have just the data points aligned and just tell me out of a probability threshold, how likely is this the fit? And then once you get to the next step, then you're presenting that candidate to your client, either a prime or a federal customer, or perhaps you don't need to. But then there's still a lot of businesses that have that process. And then you have the same effort. It's like you're able to quickly auto map and generate the customer compliant resume, or show a talent matrix.
Oh God, that's the worst. Reformatting the resume. That is the worst job ever.
Yeah, we'll have it. We're working on getting that automated. I think candidates, I think people, I think engineers specifically have been haggled time and time again to reformat their resume and whatnot. And I think there is a big opportunity in creating a better dashboard or a better vault to store the credentials of IT professionals, people that have a career, and give them a career center to add to that. And then when you bring in the data points, you have it standardized in a way that auto maps to the inputs from the companies, from what companies are looking for.
Right.
So then you have basically the different options of like, how would you like this match formatted? You know, the output, do you want it in an Excel? Do you need it in a certain customer compliant resume to get submitted? Do you need it for a proposal? Many different forms.
And I give you a lot of credit because I think I'm on the hiring end, but I think in general, almost everyone who is looking for a job, even those that are highly qualified and have too many offers, describe it as a very negative and painful process. And you are dealing with them. You have chosen a business that deals with them during that time, right? It is a negative experience in general.
Yes.
Even if the outcome is positive, no one describes the job process, the interview process, the preparing your resume process as a positive experience. It is something people hate doing.
Yeah.
And I think it's all great businesses start with pain points. So I think that you're on the right track of how can we solve pain point for a large number of people.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And just to that point, I was about to say, I was really hearing you say that I kind of lost my thought. I want to say, I think the team members go through a lot of that process. And I really appreciate the hard work because it's a tough process. It's a tough system of steps to go through. Here it is. It's back. I've learned in life, a big quote that came to me once, is that you get in life what you give. So you're going to get what you put in. And I think a lot of people have heard this before, and it's very common. It might be common sense, but just to reframe it, it's like you get what you put in. And so there's the IT professional or an engineer, and then there's a recruiter. There's multiple recruiters at different companies. There's different decision makers at those companies, and then you have end clients, and it's a very long, convoluted thing. And it's about, I think, speeding up every single interaction point to make it so that we can get back. I think we can focus on what really counts and make it a more enjoyable process. But having to go through the whole laborious things and like back and forth and trying to find a time or rescheduling via email, right? I've really appreciated that you use Calendly because I think calendar systems are just an automatic today. I mean, going back and forth, just who's got time to do that?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think that interviewing is so personal and so exposing yourself, and it's akin to dating, right? You have value in certain areas, you're weak in certain areas, and there are some things you just can't change about yourself. For example, I've always been outspoken, and I've gotten lumps for being outspoken in environments where they don't appreciate that, and it's not something I can change and fall in line, though I have wanted to very much.
Yeah.
And so I am sympathetic that interviewing is so personal. And then it's typically people's largest source of income and also their hopes for their future. And it is, it's even bigger than a house, right? It's like your ability to buy a house, your ability to take care of your family, your freedom, your ability to have freedom. It's so personal, and I'm very sympathetic, and it was a motivation for why I started my business. And I hope in my business that we're able to have people work with us for such a long time that they don't have to go through the interview process very often, that they're just able to stay with us, that they've made it through us, and that's good enough for a long period of time. But we keep them on their toes so that they are interview ready at any time.
Yeah. Well, they built that trust equity, and then you have a familiar team. You guys have your check-ins, your events that you're always there. And I think I get the feeling of just being in the presence of someone that, I feel like you might have gotten in trouble in some parts of your life where you've been so outspoken. And I love that you chose that for your podcast. But again, I think it's helped rally the people in your life that appreciate you for being authentically you.
And my customers. So I've also had to find customers that can appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a fit for everyone, right? It's not a fit. Being a disruptor often makes people uncomfortable, right? Because often it's also a reflection that what the status quo is not working.
Yes, I think disruption to anything, we all are resistant to change. Even I think the most top people in the world, they might just be, I think they're a lot more quicker to go through the cycle of, oh, whoa, I got to change now. Like, there's a process. And so a lot of people get stuck on, I think, the beginning first steps, which is resisting the change and not seeing another side. And so when you disrupt anything, or when you challenge the status quo, it's evolving, and our bodies are constantly regenerating. Like, we're not the same person we were a month ago, or a year ago, or 7 years ago. And our psyches, I think, are incredibly malleable, like our identity, our personality. And then, I'm really big in belief structures and communication and like where we come from. And, that is so, changing belief structures is almost what it is involved, because when you come back to interviewing, like, we all have biases that we've built up because we are like a machine learning algorithm. We are figuring out, how do I want to optimize my day? Do I want to wake up early? Do I want to hit the gym? Do I eat these certain foods? How do I talk? How do I give myself self-talk? How do I care for myself? And all these decisions route to form a giant umbrella of what we call our identity. It's made up of our memory. It's made up of our actions and our self-value and how we see ourselves. And so all of that constitutes, us. And when we disrupt things, we're evolving, and we're sparking change. We're igniting the decaying or the burning away of something, so that a space can be built to let something new come in.
Yeah, I had to work on two major stories I had told myself for a long time, were that I wasn't smart and that I was unlikable. Now, I kept moving forward, but I've been working with a business coach, and it was this broken story I told myself, that I'm unlikable and who would ever want to work for me, despite clear proof that wasn't true. Or if it was true in this one scenario, that I wasn't a fit for a team, it's no longer true. And these stories caused me a lot of daily pain. And I kept touching them and believing them, like that they were absolute truths about myself. And to get unstuck from those stories, I like honestly never thought I could change that. And another example is, I was a big negative Nancy and a big complainer, and I, over time, slowly became much more grateful and gratitude focused, and never thought that was possible either. And I think it's kind of a miracle when change happens by micro changes. We always think of drastic, but drastic is really the time lapse. You're missing the all the time that went between those two changes.
Yeah.
And so making those changes was little by little by little. And then eventually you forget that you were even like that, right? You become this new person in this new evolution. But I really struggled with those two things, particularly because as a woman in tech, I was told, like, women don't like to work for women. Women are terrible. You're not technical. And I believed all of it. I still moved forward, but I believed all of those things, and I had a lot of pain from believing those things.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That means a lot. And I can resonate, especially I think from my own experience, not being or feeling smart enough and not knowing what to say. And I think it's so fascinating. I think the more I've worked on it, and I also have a coach, which I think for anybody viewing, the idea of a coach, 100%, whatever I was not initially drawn to it. And I think put it off too long. If I could go back in time, I would give myself some advice to do it earlier. Much earlier. And and so the idea is it's almost like there's a story, a narrative, and it just kind of like puts blinders on you, and it filters. It causes you to perceive your life in a filtered way. And I agree 100%. I think the micro conversions, the reference points, the little actions here and there, they end up as you go to sleep and reset, which sleep is just such a marvelous thing. It's like, some days you go to bed and wake up, it is almost like you're in a completely new beat, and how important those golden hours in the morning, how you start your day. Wow. It's something I've just started working out I wake up at 6, go to the gym, start my day March 1st, and I've been loving it ever since. Made a big change. First time ever starting my day working out.
Are you drinking water before you go?
Yes. Probably not enough though. I should probably drink more water.
You definitely need to drink 8 ounces before you start your workout.
Oh yeah.
Wake up and drink water.
100%. Yes. I am, you can call me water boy. I am actively drinking water on the regular. Yeah. So here, I got a question. If you could go back in time and see your 21-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself?
I would tell myself it's all going to be okay. I think when I was 21, I was so concerned with how would it all turn out? Would I get married? Would I have kids? Will I go up the ladder? I never thought in a million years I'd create my own ladder or create my own company. And I think to know that there will be really negative things that will happen, but that make you and make you beautiful. So I just had such concern about performing and being good, and it is your life to create. And I think when you're young and you're not raised by entrepreneurs or mavericks, you see a very clear path, right? You go to college, you get a job, you hopefully meet someone, fall in love, get married, and have kids. And my vision was to keep working and to do very well at work and make an impact.
Yeah.
And my mom died suddenly when I was 30, and my husband didn't want to be married to me anymore at the same time. And it was an explosion in my life.
Wow.
And I think I studied engineering maybe a little bit because my mom thought it was cool. So it was a big question of who am I? What do I really want to do with my life? I don't have to be an engineer. I don't have to live in DC. Why am I making these choices? You know how a lot of COVID has reset people's values and asked them what's really important. And
yeah,
I just want everyone to know, you can go to a crappy college, right? And you can still be the most amazing person on earth and a billionaire, right? You can change. You can go through negative things and come out stronger than you ever thought. And there's beauty in that. So I think that I would just tell myself, it'll all be okay. And that's what I tell most young people, it's all going to be okay. And I think if you want to do something, you should do it. Don't look for external validation. I don't know if it's a female thing or not, but I think a lot of times you're almost told to expect approval from somebody else, and you may never ever get it. There are people close to me who weren't oh yeah, go start a business. They were I don't know why you would leave that really stable company and go off and do this unstable thing.
Yeah.
And so I think it's your own life, and just go live it for everything that's absolutely perfect for you.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I really feel on so many levels that it's been a transformational journey that you've been on, and that starting this company was one of the best decisions you made. And I think we downplay the negative in our life, when in actuality, I think it has such a eternal relationship with goodness or with the positive. It's you almost have to pay the cost sometimes, or there's just the duality. It's the appreciation that you can feel going through these negative experiences, but keeping a frame of hey, it's going to be okay. And I think there's a powerful act of declaration available to you in that moment, in a specific moment where you take an oath, or from an overall feeling, sentiment that you take, maybe it's a day or two later after something happens, or it builds up until another moment where you say, hey, I'm going to exercise my will, and I'm going to align and make this for me.
And I think I never found a place in a company where I was the darling. Well, there was one company, but it was a nonprofit and it wasn't a great long-term fit for me. Mm-hmm. And, I was batted around a bit from the companies I worked for, but if I hadn't, maybe I would have never started my own business.
It's funny how that works out.
Right. And I think that everything gives you freedom to open you up from a different perspective. We didn't win this recent contract that we were down selected for. And then it turns out, that gives us freedom to work on something else and to double down on something else versus being distracted. And also turns out the contract got changed by the government at the last minute anyway. So sometimes even getting what you want is a negative thing, right? So I got married at 28. And then I got divorced at 31. But then that led me to find my husband, who is like a perfect match. So,
wow.
And we, and have my beautiful children, and my husband's part of the company as well. So you just don't know how it's going to turn out at the end. You're living through the nail biting moments yourself, right? Yeah. You are the hero in the dark, scary woods sometimes.
And there's a story, and you don't know, being the protagonist, right? And there's antagonists here and there, and there's events. And if only we could just zoom out and see our life from a bigger picture, right? We could see how powerful every day really is, and the energy that we put out, and the progression, right? I think it's the old adage of, you down bet what you can accomplish in a year, but you really under bet what you can do in 5 years or longer.
Yeah.
And compounding is just massive.
And the other advice I give is don't get married before 30. Don't get married before 30.
Good. I like that. I think it's a powerful, because you still are kind of deciding, figuring out yourself, right? And
people change so much in their 20s.
Yes. Yeah. So you feel like once you were 30,
in their 20s.
When did you feel like your identity, I guess, more cemented? When did you feel like, okay, this is me? Was it right at 30, or was it shortly after?
I don't know that I've ever changed that much, but I think that I understood myself better. And I think I'm the baby of the family, and I think I put too much in other people's opinions versus trusting my own gut.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot, and it took a while to really understand that my gut knew before I could articulate it or had data points, and that I knew what was inherently right for me, right? Like I knew that I wanted to be a software engineer and not a consultant, even though people wanted me to do that. I knew I wanted to live in Virginia. I just think, and now Baltimore, but
yeah.
I think your gut knows, and I think that you know yourself a lot better. Even at 40, you know yourself better than in your 30s. Your 20s are about becoming, and in your 30s, you're typically focused on a relationship and child rearing and kind of becoming an adult. And then in your 40s, you're like, it's pretty cemented who you are. Not that you can't still have this great evolution and become an entrepreneur, but you're less vague about who you might become or what interests you or where your passion lies or what you want out of your life. And I think that's the blessing of getting older.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you've already thought through a lot of these things. You've been exposed to so many circumstances and events. Your experience has enriched.
Yeah.
And your belief structures have become refined. And at that point, you've already gone through, I think, a lot of work, right? Analyzing your belief structure, your self-identity, and then downloading and planting in, new belief structures, new totems of power that, radiate and give you that confidence or give you those, pick-me-ups or reminders or say, this is who I am. And I'm holding the line. This is it.
Yeah. And so, to the 21-year-olds, I would say, you can't speed up the process. You are evolving, right? A butterfly has to go through the cocoon to become a butterfly. you cannot skip that process. Having a baby still takes 9 months of like cooking a baby, right?
Yeah.
Starting a business and making a successful business still takes time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Becoming wise and experienced and something of value takes time, and you can't skip through the work. There's no magic pill.
There is none. Just smile, wake up, and keep getting it done day after day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Adds up.
Do the work. Do the work.
So we're definitely coming up, I think, towards the end here. I really appreciated so much of this quality conversation time. I do have one last question that I'd like to end with is, if you could change anything about the world, what would it be?
I would love us to all be kinder to each other. I would really love just a daily high degree of respect and kindness for all living beings, and understanding that everyone is going through a challenge. I think that life can be wonderful and life can be hard, and we don't need to add to people's problems by being assholes. So I think that if we could just all be a lot nicer to each other. I'm not magically wishing everything away and that there's no pain or illness, but I just wish that we would all respect human life in the same way that we want to be respected.
Wow. And I think from earlier, I really feel like the important thread, because I think kindness is almost synonymous with like a level of respect. Because if you really respect other people, you come from a place of kindness and compassion. And then I think what we talked about earlier, if I may add, I think it's almost like bringing your authenticity and owning who you are, and just bringing yourself out and let it shine, and be open-minded and respect people and engage and show compassion and kindness, which goes a long way.
Right.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we close?
I think if you're looking for a data science or a software engineering job, please check out our website. Or no, don't even check out our website. Email us at hello@nyla.io to start the conversation. And if you're looking for a great small business partner, Nyla is a full stack software engineering and data science firm with 8A HubZone and woman-owned certification. So thank you so much for the time. It's been a wonderful and wide-ranging discussion. And my dog Shiloh says hello.
Hey, welcome. Thank you. And all the click notes will be inside the description below. So if anybody would like to reach out directly to Shana, I'll have her info there. And thank you. Thank you so much for your time. This has been insightful, and I feel like I'm about to have one of the most amazing days ever.
Awesome. I'm going to go post an ad to LinkedIn.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Thank you, Shana, so much for your time, and you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Alexander.